You are on the right side of history. You are. You're doing everything possible to save lives.
I don't think it's a coincidence that if you look at the ceasefire resolution that Cori Bush had introduced, there's 16 members of Congress currently who signed it. I don't think it's a coincidence that it is disproportionately people of color who signed it. This is a white liberal thing that they need to look at deeply and understand why they just can't sympathize with brown people who are undergoing apartheid and understand what their role in history is and how they're not really better than the past. Like a lot of these liberals, I think that if they were in the 1800s, they'd be fucking supporting slavery. They'd be supporting apartheid in South Africa. They go along with popular sentiment. That's what we're seeing here. And it's despicable. Like these people, I have no respect for them.
And then you have someone like go ahead.
I was going to mention someone that Ro Khanna does not support the ceasefire, right? And his political director resigned after just 2 weeks on the job because of this. So Ryan Grimm tweeting out, Ro Khanna's political director has resigned after just 2 weeks on the job. He wanted Khanna to co-sponsor Tlaib's ceasefire resolution, but Khanna has not done so. Like, we're just talking about a ceasefire here. Like, this is not, right, come out to even support Palestinians. Like, just, hey, a ceasefire. Let's end the violence. And he won't even do that.
Mm-hmm. He's a fucking coward.
Yeah. So here's the guy's tweet about this. So, personal note, I resigned my job on Monday because of a refusal to call for a ceasefire. I'll be doing everything in my power to stand against war and for Palestinian justice. So please continue to DM any volunteering/organizing needs that I can assist with in New York and DC. So there are very few, as I put on Twitter, there are very few people like this in politics, especially in Washington. But just someone who will actually, stand by their principles and not deal with this shit.
Yeah, he put his account unprotected, by the way, as well. So I'm assuming he's getting a lot of harassment, probably by liberals.
Probably.
There were some reports, though. There was an article, I think it was like NBC or something, where, I mean, they haven't been so brave yet, but, maybe it'll come to that as this continues. There's apparently a good portion of the Biden administration, obviously not in high positions, but who are not happy with the Biden administration's position on this. And they're also
guy
it was this, right.
He said that he was an arms dealer.
Josh Paul, is that his name?
Yeah, Josh. Yeah. He was an arms dealer for the United States, and he
just
literally
resigned the arms dealer. Right.
The arms dealer resigned. Yes, Biden's arms dealer just resigned over his stance on Israel.
When the arms dealer resigns, you're in the wrong.
I think his reasoning was he always knew his what he did was going to cause harm, but he looked at his role as trying to cause the least amount of harm in that position.
He's that's why a lot of people the noble arms dealer kind of.
That's why a lot of people try that's their excuse for staying in their position. And in some ways, I can kind of it depends on who you're working for and how much, and if you've seen successes in your ability to try to move someone in a certain direction. Like I understand that. But I also really respect someone who's just like, I don't see any progress here, and there's no use in me staying here, and I'm just going to leave.
Yeah.
I mean, Democrats are literally pulling themselves apart. Like, the party was actually, obviously there's always going to be people, but I feel like, especially compared to Republicans, pretty for the most part, together. Obviously there are issues, but nothing that was like Biden is done. But I truly can see a large portion of the Democratic base just deciding maybe not to go out next year or just not vote at all.
Well, also, a ton of voters. What is this going to do for all of the Generation Z and millennials who are just completely disgusted by this to suddenly see, isn't that new package being proposed $100 billion? And yes, I think 90% of it is going to Ukraine, but that's still $10 billion at a time right now when the fucking horrifying stats speak for themselves. How are you going to posture come the next election cycle saying that, and I agree with this, by the way, Donald Trump is a fascist, etc., when at the same time you're we're going to militarily arm someone committing these atrocities, an administration currently responsible for that? What is that going to have on the youth vote or anyone who's maybe on the fence about the process?
And how's that going to affect Michigan, a swing state where there's a very large Arab population there? Biden is sending a very clear message to Muslims. They feel abandoned. Rashida Tlaib, the only Palestinian American member of Congress, is saying we feel abandoned. For her to say that that means the situation is very dire. Now, it's possible that Biden is doing things behind the scenes to try to stop the ground invasion, but his rhetoric has been terrible. And what a president says in these times is really, really important. And I think that in the same way that Trump encouraged a lot of white supremacist violence, Biden is encouraging a lot of Islamophobia. He's got to have the blood on his hands too. What he's doing is completely unacceptable and irresponsible, in my opinion.
Since you brought it up, here's Rashida Tlaib talking about this.
President Biden, not all of America's with you on this one. And you need to wake up and understand that. We are literally watching people commit genocide and killing a vast majority just like this. And we still stand by and say nothing. We will remember this. But all of you, you need to know, I swear to God, Allah, you are on the right side of history. You are. You're doing everything possible to save lives. What is wrong with that? Stop it with trying to politicize this. One goal, save lives. That's it, President Biden.
Yeah, that was great. That was great.
Yeah, so powerful.
I would really encourage everyone not to do self-promo. Watch my video tomorrow. I'm working on it right now. There's a lot of parallels between September post 9/11 and today. So like if you look at what Rashida Tlaib and members of the squad are being called, especially Cori Bush, because she's another really outspoken person, they're being called terrorist sympathizers, traitors. Marjorie Greene is going to introduce a resolution to censure her. Also accused her of doing an insurrection because of the pro-peace rally. But go back to September 14th of 2020 or 2001, excuse me. Barbara Lee, she was the lone vote against the war in Afghanistan. She was called a traitor, sympathizing with terrorists. It's the same thing. Also in the Senate, they voted 98-0 in 2001 to give Bush the broad authorization to wage war. Today, 97-0. In the Senate to stand with Israel. Now, this isn't a resolution to stand with the people of Israel. They're standing with the far-right, ultra-nationalist, Trumpian government of Israel. All of them voted for that. Bernie Sanders, too. So Bernie Sanders fucked up, and he admitted it when he voted for the Afghanistan war, gave Barbara Lee credit, did not learn from that mistake. Bernie Sanders is doing the same thing. Now, this isn't necessarily a one-to-one comparison because a resolution saying we stand with this government isn't necessarily the same thing as like giving, the president authorization for war. But like a million dead Iraqis later, 20 years later, we haven't learned a single thing. And seeing that is so frustrating because I felt like after how colossally the U.S. government fucked up, after how many supposedly progressive pro-peace Democrats fucked up and admitted that they were wrong, they're making the same mistake again. And it is infuriating.